Dang it.
Well, welcome one, welcome all. Super excited to have everyone back for another session. Just want to thank my brothers, of course, Giga, Tomas, Brandomir, and all parties involved in this particular session today. I think that I'm particularly excited because this is a generation of Origin Trail that is completely unique. We've never seen this version of Origin Trail so accessible, so advanced. I would say technologically. That, hey, I mean, there are systems way smarter than all of us building it, right? So, welcome to the new era of AI and Origin Trail. So today, I would love to, of course, welcome again, once again, everyone, and we will love to start this discussion diving into the core tenets or the, I guess, the future of Origin Trail. So, without further ado, I wanted to maybe pass it off or open it up to the Origin Trail core team. Branimir, Tomas, Giga, what do you have anything to say to kick us off today? How are you feeling? How are you doing? How's everything going?
How you doing? I'm good. I'm good. Can't complain.
Great to see you, Amos. Excited for the AMA and for DKG V10, which is coming out in just a bit.
Mm-hmm. And Giga, anything from you?
Yeah, like I'm trying to choose where to start, but I guess you made a nice segue with the this ability for anyone to use the new technology and run with it much more quickly than so far have been. And we're noticing this with our friends, with our partners, whereby it's not just people who have like very deep engineering skills that they can build something fast, but basically anyone can build something in a matter of seconds, even on the DKG, myself including. So this democratization is actually being enabled now through the new technology that allows you to co-locate agents within the decentralized node and then build magic. And we're receiving some like very, very encouraging reports, not just from within community, but also from the enterprises using it, as more people within organizations can now build new features, very quickly launch prototypes on the DKG. And this is absolutely exciting because right now in this world, the distribution is key. They say distribution is moat, and the moat is also the context that is becoming more and more important as it's easy to access compute. So compute is no longer a moat. I can run compute on my computer. But what is really a moat is the context, and more specifically, the knowledge around this context, the decision traces that humans make, that agents make. And we've been kind of prophetic with the decentralized knowledge graph, launching it nearly a decade ago. And now it seems that everybody's talking about context. It's talking about context graphs. And as if OriginTrail was initially built just 10 years ago and more, with this AI revolution in mind. So it's pretty exciting to be living this through this revolution.
Indeed. And again, before we even joined the call a little bit, we did talk briefly about how timely, or I guess, as you said, prophetic, the release and the building of the ordinary ecosystem is. We truly are seeing experts all over the world talk about this new paradigm of context graphs. Now, the technology that is below context graphs isn't necessarily new. We know about these things. We know about knowledge graphs. We've been building, right? But this is a specific use case of knowledge graphs that is quite impactful. So we have more time to dive into that. And before we run it dry, we probably should also get to some questions. And since we have a question that's similar to this context graph discussion, I think we can probably move in that direction as well. But yes, I do agree that the context graphs is probably going to be one of the most impactful things in the AI realm. Context is very important for these agents to understand what they're doing, remember what they did, and then build upon their future actions, right? So context is really what takes AI from being, oh, well, I'm okay, I'm good, and I can accomplish things, to from being in that mode to, oh, dude, I can really build even better systems, or I can discover more things because I already know I failed in the past, right? Let me try something else. So context is very important. So to kick things off, first of all, I want to thank the OriginTrail community for submitting questions for our AMA. And as we dive deeper into building out the OriginTrail ecosystem, we need to have everyone asking questions that provoke our thoughts, provoke our minds, so that we're making sure that we're pushing the ecosystem in the right direction. So I guess one of the first things we could do is talk about one of the first questions submitted by our OriginTrail community. And I'm probably going to slay this name, but it seems to be an abbreviation for the word universe, right? So universe asked, how do you prevent misinformation on the DKG? I think most people who submit information will do so honestly, but mistakes happen and information change. What measures are there to verify accuracy of new and old information on the DKG? I could pass this off to anyone, so I'll just leave it to whoever grabs the mic first.
Well, I don't have a mic. The guy's having.
So I'll grab my mic like this and jump on it. It's a very good question. It's the DKG is basically one of the rare tools that enables verifiability in the information that it's hosting. But people tend to think about this as kind of a digital thing, like it's either true or not. And when you think about it, it's not like actually not easy to think to do that in the real world as well. Like it's verifying something being true is actually quite a challenging task. So if you want to build a protocol that's going to do that for any piece of information in the world, you're probably trying to do an impossible thing that is like going to do it by itself immediately. But you can build tools that help whoever's building a particular type of information system, knowledge graph, context graph, be able to use to come closer or to the end to this truth that they're looking for. So, for example, I can give an example that I've been very active lately in, and that's going to be something that V10 is going to bring to the DKG. But also, like something that's very natural to me as a software engineer, it's coding. So if you look at the knowledge in the coding sense, the knowledge lives in the code. It lives on GitHub. And GitHub has a bunch of comments up there and updates to the code and things like that. And essentially, you get a system that is not by definition a knowledge graph, but can benefit a lot from a knowledge graph, and especially a decentralized knowledge graph like the DKG. Because when you think about how we do code, for those of you who have done any coding, you kind of do some code on your computer, then you push it to the repository for other developers to see it in a pull request. Then we merge that code somehow once the feedback goes through, and then at some point it gets released. So it goes through phases, and these phases go through checks, and not everybody is allowed to push a release and so on. So you can see that as an example of verification of certain code or data or knowledge. And the DKG V10 offers that capability in actually 4 layers. So you might have seen, if you've played around with DKG V9, new concepts in the DKG, such as the workspace, or as we're about to see it called shared working memory. Imagine having multiple agents doing some task, coding or writing a text or whatever, and they share a graph, reviewing each other's work. But before that, they have their own internal working memory, so they work on their own thing. Whatever that is it true or not? But at some point, they expose it to other agents, and then these other agents decide either to publish it to the DKG as a statement, or decide if they want to trigger a consensus-based verification that's actually enforced on the blockchain. So these are some really powerful tools that let us have agents basically reach some sort of conclusion. Another very important tool is the ability to make logical conclusions. So we know that the agents can hallucinate, right? Because they're based on LLMs. This is a property of LLMs. It's like a feature. And I'm not saying that to bash on LLMs. All I'm saying is that they're very creative, and sometimes they can invent references. They can invent all kinds of things. But graphs actually allow you to do logical reasoning. So I always use the same example, so I'll use it today. The example from logic that we were taught in school was that Socrates is human, and if a human is mortal, if you have these two statements in a graph, then you can make a conclusion that Socrates is mortal. And there's no hallucination potential there. You just did logical reasoning of first order logic, basically. So graphs allow you to do that. So imagine having the ability to check a statement, Socrates is mortal, by asking the DKG to tell you what it knows about it. And the DKG can say, hey, this was derived from two previously made statements that were perhaps signed by multiple agents. And it's up to you, the reader, to decide if this is enough verifiability for you, if you should trust this piece of information. So in the sense of, and this mimics the real world, not just on GitHub and coding, it mimics, if somebody tells me today that Earth is flat, I'm basically going to try to use that statement and somehow reconcile it with my worldview, with the graph I have in my head. And I believe that the Earth is round. I've seen plenty of what I believe is evidence for it. Haven't been in space to see it myself, to be honest. So I've used the data that I know to come to a conclusion that this is the thing that I think is true, which is the Earth is not flat, and that statement is something that I'm not going to take into account. So we offer the same capability to agents, basically. So back to the question of if somebody puts unverified knowledge into the DKG, it's about giving the agents enough context and enough tools so they can come to a ideally logical conclusion, not a hallucinated one, that would say that, okay, this makes sense. I will consider this part of my worldview or world model, as is another term for this new brave new world of AI. So I think it's a great question, and the answer might, sorry if it was a bit long, lies in mimicking what we do normally, but allowing the best possible tools and agents to use those best possible tools together.
Yeah, maybe to add, Branimir mentioned context. We say trust the source, right? So even if something is not true, if it's on the DKG, then agents can traverse it and they can label the information, untrue information, as untrue. So whatever is on the DKG, in essence, it happened, even though it's a lie. You know what I mean? But you trust that the source that is going to stay there is going to be traversed by other agents later on to label it as a lie, as opposed to, so how do lies appear in human world? They appear through gossip. People say something, but then no one is actually sure who said something. And at the end of the day, because the lie is repeated several times and there is no lineage of information where it came from, this lie becomes somehow very impactful. And you see this with prediction markets, which are ripe with misinformation. You have plenty of comments that are basically made up, and then if you do background check, you see it's not true, because agents, they have an intent to manipulate the outcome, because there are some monetary rewards involved. And meanwhile those bots, they basically disappear, or they're so unimportant and trivial, no one actually records them and chases them. So trust the source. The source, you get it on the DKG. There's a provenance, and anyone can build on top of that. And even lies are an important element to be enshrined and be made immutable, because then when the pattern is repeated, humans can decide who to trust, which source to trust. But in a way, what is true and what is truth, the DKG itself, just as a off-the-shelf solution, it cannot discern what is true and what isn't. It's the context, and the richer the context, the better the capability for anyone to decide on what to trust and what not to trust.
Now, beautifully articulated. This brings me back to Slovenia in December, where I was having a conversation with one of the OriginTrail developers about this very topic. Actually, how do you establish truth? What is truth? And fundamentally, one point I stated was, well, we can't have truth because we don't know everything, right? Like we would have to be literally God. We'd have to know every component in the universe. We'd have to understand everything about time, everything about everything, to know that something is the truth. So all humans can do is approximate truth, right? And we have various mechanisms that allow us to approximate this truth. And one thing is size, majority, right? You know, as you said, somebody could tell a lie, but it becomes truth the more people agree with it, right? So people give things power, and be that lies, truth, whatever. The majority that flies around this concept that may be truth or not can make it seem as though it is true, right? So I think that it's clear to say that things like majority systems, where hey, the amount of likes versus dislikes is not always a good indicator of truth. Like something can be a sensation, something can be polarizing, but that does not mean it is truth because it's being reacted to by so many people, right? So fundamentally, I think that what the DKG is doing is stripping back, or going a deeper level. It's saying, hey, we don't even rely upon the majority consensus per se. What we're going to do is focus on the source. Where did this statement come from? Is this thing trustable itself? And from there, you're even able to build a better system of determining truth when you then subsidize this with AI agents, right? So fundamentally, I think this is probably one of the most elegant solutions I've heard to establishing truth in a decentralized system, right? In a decentralized format where everyone can participate. So this is actually very astonishing, and I think it's something the OriginTrail community should feel very proud about as it relates to how we're going about implementing this solution. So again, really awesome response, really awesome suggestion, a discussion. We did have more to dive into the concept of context graphs, but I do know we obviously also have AMA questions to address. If it were me, I could talk all day about the context graphs alone. So I'll just try my best to keep things rolling, but I will, in the end, try to squeeze some of that context graph juice out of that, right? So let's move on to the next question. We have Fred, who's asking the next question, and it's a relatively simple question. He says, "Thanks, guys. Where do you guys see OriginTrail 2 years from now, or 5 years from now? What do you see?" And of course, a little hint, if he did attend DKG Con and he looked at the presentations at DKG Con, he could talk about the world model and all of that. But anyway, feel free to take it away. Should I pass it on? Okay, don't make me choose now. I'm going to choose. If I choose, then you have to answer it. All right. So
maybe you'll make it easy for everybody, because we'll start waiting for who's going to pitch in.
You know what? Tomas has been very silent, and I know that this is something he spoke about at DKG Con as well, the future vision of OriginTrail. So feel free to take it away, brother.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, it's time to tap in. I'll try to limit the human generated slop. To make it concise. I think OriginTrail is at the transformative phase for a few reasons. The first one being the user of the DKG is changing dramatically. It's something we were seeing happen before, where there was AI systems getting more involved in interacting with the DKG. Agents have been slowly creeping up and exploding in the last phase. So the future users of DKG are by far no longer limited to humans, but they are becoming agents. So everything that we speak about when it comes to how do we trust the data, how do we know what is true, how do we interact with the data, all of that needs to be supporting that thesis that agents are the ones who are majorly using the DKG. The second thing I'd highlight when it comes to the, let's say, 2 and a 5 year vision of OriginTrail is that the DKG was so far limited in terms of where it appeared. DKG needs to become present everywhere. So think that this, whether you call it a decentralized physical infrastructure, whether you call it, covering all the machines, whether it's tip of the iceberg, and going much deeper into accessing the individuals' machines, whether it's laptops, phones, tablets, IoT devices. Like the DKG should be able to interact with many more physical devices, because that's where also agents will be running or interacting with, and that's something that's going to be a big change. So that's I think it's something that we'll see it more present. The type of users will changing. We'll see it much more present in terms of where it resides. It will be much broader, and then that will also include that the DKG becomes more inclusive in terms of the data that it onboards, and that's a big one for both of the previous movements. What I mean by the data it onboards, or how is it inclusive, is that today's AI systems are still largely trained or using what is only publicly available internet, and that is small in comparison to all the data that exists in the world, and also it's the least quality compared to all the data that is in the world. So once we are able to make it so inclusive that we are able to tap into the data sources which previously felt unsafe to interact with AI systems, or were not able to due to regulatory constraints, or were not able to due to technical constraints, if DKG strips away all of these considerations and is able to tap into that wealth of data underneath, this is where really the big thing starts shifting. And then whatever theory or whatever growth engine you take, whether it's Karpathy's auto research, whether it's in OpenClaw, whether it's Hermes agents, whatever it is that you see to be an engine of growth of these types of systems, can benefit from having the DKG integration, or the access to DKG, or co-location with the DKG, because of those three pillars. So agents becoming largely big users of the DKG, the spread of physical co-location of DKG being much more wider spread, and with that the inclusiveness to the data of that context graph spreading from the local to the public, is where really the big value can get captured for the entire AI industry. And with that, we can come to what is a world model. Because if we build the world model on the data from 8chan, 4chan, Reddit, and the likes, it'll be a shitty one. So we want it to be more inclusive, and that's how we really can construct this context graph that reflects a much more cohesive view of the world. And yeah, maybe I'll land it at that, and then leave it for the guys to fill up anything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentally, it's a very important. I think one of the key takeaways for me is we're moving away from, well, not moving away, but the key user now are AI agents, and I think that is the cherry on top, the big point to make here. Like, things have changed. The DKG is evolving, and these AI agents will output more than any single human can ever, right? We're talking about decision traces at every action, every interval. And in my experiences and playing with the DKG V9 and playing with other versions of these V8 and such, it's clear to see that almost everything the AI agent does is valuable data for the DKG, and everything feeds back into a positive loop to refine a particular AI agent system, right? So the DKG is just, I don't know, it's just like the perfect match for this time of AI systems. So I don't know if you wanted to add more to Tomas's point, Giga or Branimir.
Yeah, I think you're opening up a a can of worms with like double clicking on the agents. It's, you know, if you're looking at because now going back to the question being that there was a clear time horizon of 2 and 5 years, so we can throw around a few assumptions, right? That take AI being the stupidest and slowest that it's ever going to be, so we can take any rate of advancements from this point on and figure out like what's happening, right? So if we say that today you can already, there's a big gap that was created from the perspective of the coding industry being the first to get really like strongly shaken up or disrupted by how big of an output you can create with the current stage of systems versus like even November last year. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like if we say that from 1 year on now, we're going to have, again, like with any rate of progress, these systems are going to enable us to almost have software on demand.
Right.
Like you're going to need a dashboard. You'll wish a dashboard. There's a dashboard, done. Like, you know, these types of things are no longer constraints. And what were OriginTrail's biggest constraints? It was never the fact that this isn't a highly useful technology to connect data silos together. This was never the fact that if we are the best technology to coordinate different entities to be more easily collaborating with each other. That was always a fact. The problems were in being able to be flexible enough to leverage the underlying data. And now we have something that's data, that's software on demand. So think of what does that mean for DKG? It means that now 90% of your effort should be on making sure that the data is nicely not only structured but also controlled, allocated, connected, so that you have this coordination in place, co-located with your agents. And then whatever you need to make it human readable is just a matter of today is going to be this, and tomorrow I'll wish up another app or another interface, and it'll be there, right? I'll tap it into another tool and I'll have that now available to like, again, we're looking 2-5 years into the future. And then this is only when we're talking about coding and like direct like software generation capabilities. But this really transpires when like combined with high quality data into any field that we can think of, right? You know, 30,000 layoffs at Oracle weren't all engineers, right? Like there, you can see the impact of that created across middle management, created across white collar jobs, where really what is the moat? What's the thing that's going to keep it up, right? That your organization like has an edge. It's going to be how well can you like create high quality data, protect it, and then create different coordinations to stay a step ahead against anyone else. This is where your delta is coming in. And 2 and 5 years from now, this is likely going to be more true than less true from the point of view of today. So this is where the agents being like dominant actors in the space, it becomes it's not just a thing like to say. It's not just we're going to have personal agents doing our emails, you know, like really okay, but like this isn't the big value grabs, right? When we're talking about like the whole industry is getting disrupted, and the fact that something like a DKG is getting described by the Karpatis of the world, it's getting described by literally anyone, you know, trying to connect more than 2 agents together, they come into the point where they try to invent the DKG. Because it's
fundamentally, yes.
Because this is what you need, right? Oh, how can I do it? Well, I have 2 agents, they don't speak to each other. Or if they do, they only use like MDs. So it's as soon as you go into like significant use cases with like large data sets, they hallucinate, they can't tell their ass from their face. Yes, it's by design, you know, it's not intended, right? So if you want to have highly performance systems, you have to make up a DKG. And here it is, getting created by agents, because agents gave us shit that they need to better.
Right.
It's literally like,
And you know, oh, sorry, go ahead, Giga. You take the mic. Feel free.
No, maybe I'll just perhaps one thing is long term, but then there is short term. And given that V10 is also addressing some of the short term things and very important things, I think it's also important to point out that, of course, there are things at which OriginTrail as is, or it has been, is hands down, you know, the best system you can think of in terms of being a trust layer. But the V10 really is addressing things at which OriginTrail at this present moment, or it has not been the best at some other things. So competing with, let's say, centralized providers of knowledge graphs or even compute, the decentralized knowledge graph, OriginTrail, didn't have the edge in some of the things that the V10 is bringing. I will just mention one, and then we can go perhaps a little bit deeper into other not yet optimal, but things that are going to bring us much further, closer to centralized incumbents, is the distribution. So how do you make DKG available for implementation and to any developer, to any enterprise, very quickly? And right now, the decentralized knowledge graph V10 is introducing certain economics that is going to make it far more favorable for larger publishers, or let's call them wholesale buyers of the DKG or the allotment of the DKG, to pre-commit the track token for much greater operations that are not yet on the DKG. So they would basically be pre-purchasing capacities within the decentralized knowledge graph. Kind of imagine them as someone who's buying for the usage for the future usage of the DKG at the wholesale, but of course getting certain very appealing discount. And then these wholesalers, they can become your whatever digital ocean vendors, like companies that are then going to sell the parts within the decentralized knowledge graph. So the allotment, the capacity, to retail buyers, which are smaller companies, developers working with AI agents. And the way the wholesalers, let's call them DKG wholesalers, are going to be able to sell DKG capacities is as easy as giving the users a way to use Stripe to basically pay with a credit card for the usage of the DKG. I know $200 per month of a subscription, and then they would not need to mind all the underlying infrastructure, economics, tokenomics that is necessary to actually use the knowledge graph. So this is bringing the drive to the DKG, in a sort of way, publisher conviction way. And on the flip side, there is also a tremendously interesting situation for stakers, because they can foresee to a much greater extent how much is going to be spent from, let's say, the allotments that were pre-purchased, larger allotments of the DKG capacity by these DKG wholesalers, and then they can be a little bit more, let's say, informed as to how much will it have been emitted in terms of the track as rewards in the future, or at least within the year, 2 years, in which this 12 months or 24 months emissions are set in place programmatically through this new publisher conviction system, which is a little bit more complex to understand. But once you go into an example, you see that it brings about this flywheel between publishers and stakers. Publishers, on one hand, they get a very interesting discount, but they have to pre-commit much larger allotments of track. And even if they're not publishing, actually these allotments of track, they get emitted to the stakers, which is favorable again on the other side for the stakers, because they can rest assured how much of the track will have been emitted in the next years in the decentralized knowledge graph. And of course, there is also stakers conviction system getting in place, which is rewarding those who are willing to stake, so provide the network security for a longer period of time. So two-sided conviction bringing about much more interesting flywheel. But perhaps for me, at least personally, more interesting is really this part, that using and paying for the usage of the DKG will become as easy as paying Claude or Anthropic for compute. So paying your Max Claude Max subscription, for instance.
Right. And this obviously lends itself to building a very easy to use ecosystem around the DKG, or I guess an easy to use layer on top of the DKG, where you're taking away the complexities of dealing with like the tokens and all of these different things, right? So I think this is very a useful mechanism, useful innovation. And going back to Maz's point as well about AI agents and the data they produce, right? Like we see that we know the saying, data is the new oil. I think what AI is doing, right, it's clearly showing that there's also like quality of this oil, and we want the best quality oil for the best quality purpose. You know what I'm saying? So it's just perfect. The DKG is like getting this. Well, some would say like the Apple for AI. Is the highest quality ecosystem for AI to thrive in. Yeah. So very exciting stuff, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing some of these innovations roll out into the future. So I didn't know if we wanted to dive a bit deeper, but we do have some other questions to address from the community as well. So we can continue to roll on. Did you have more you wanted to add?
Yeah, just wanted to add. So what I was describing, how do we get to the future, which is, even more prosperous? You need to think of the types of the persons that you might have seen recently in some of the podcasts by Humanitech or the AI. I think it was AI Summit, the way they framed it.
Yes,
They get people that are representing the biggest celebrities, people that are, that are investing in the most successful startups. So these people want they want to be using the kind of system as the DKG is at the same with the same easiness as Claude, and in the next few weeks we're getting there. And for us, it has never been a problem to onboard, to get more partners to use the DKG. So there's a lot of very interesting stuff going on. The major, let's say, churn that we have noticed is this implementability. Because it's complex, you need engineers. And then also payments are not easy. So this is something that is going to basically turn things around significantly for the good of the ecosystem.
Yes, I firmly agree. My wife is primarily an Apple user. I was primarily Windows, and I would say, well, we have so much power and this and that. But the reason why she chose Apple is because it's just easier for her to use. It's like she doesn't care about the power. She doesn't care about the complexity and how much you could how modular it is. It's just easier for her to use. It's easier for her to take her iPhone and connect it to her laptop, and it's just easier, right? So I think, again, humans take the path of least resistance. If we could, as easy as we make it for the DKG to be accessed, it's always a win. That's always a good thing. So kudos to you and the team for pushing that forward. And I do think that increases the kind of users we see coming to the DKG. We will also see people who don't know how to create a wallet now, but they now have their bank card and they know how to use that very well. So they'll use that, right? So this is all good, just expanding the surface of access to the DKG. So all that is said, all that is great, but I do want to get a very important question out there by someone who's a very loyal community member, BRX. I know you're smiling ear to ear right now because I said your name. Yes, I did it, and I'll say it again, BRX. So stop smiling, but we will get your question addressed right now. And it's relatively long, so I'll just read a portion of it, right? So it says, with the new conviction staking multipliers, which is something the team already spoke about, would the team consider allowing stakers to claim earned rewards on a much shorter schedule? For example, like a monthly kind of thing, or while the principal track remains fully locked for the chosen conviction period. I will also just add this little bit here. Right now, the docs indicate rewards are tied/restricted during the full lock. So he's saying, what are your thoughts on this implementation for V10 or something like this for V10? And of course, I would probably push this question over to Brandon, man, because he's probably working at that level directly.
Yeah, thanks, Amos. It's a good question. The question of analogy to like this being present in, let's say, similar. We don't have a similar protocol in the Web3 like the DKG, but in terms of similarity, you could say that the system that V10 will operate on further extends the approach that Uniswap V3 does, which is basically creating a position, a conviction position, if you will, on the DKG. And when you stake, which by the way you don't have to do, you can stake without conviction at all, and therefore you have zero lock whatsoever. That means you can pull out the tokens, including rewards, at any point in time. But if you are applying conviction, then that conviction position basically operates across the entirety of those tokens. Now, that's where the similarities to Uniswap and the others. One of the inspirations, we were trying to actually make the system somehow operate, if possible, in a similar fashion like Curve, because Curve has a very cool system of the V tokens. But unfortunately, the differences that make the DKG itself move the implementation in that direction. We try to basically, you cannot reconcile all the things together. And believe me, we used all the AIs in the world to brainstorm all of the ideas here, including giving it a lot of knowledge graph based information and the DKG code and everything. So it's irreconcilable to make a V-track like thing that is fungible and that is movable, and at the same time involves conviction and certain discount and boosts, and all things together, they end up colliding at one point, because you get competing conflicting requirements essentially playing around. So it's an implementation point that is EVM also somewhat constrained, and because DKG is EVM based and operates across multiple EVM chains, we basically have to go with this. But that said, like, that doesn't mean that if your conviction, let's say your conviction position, the conviction NFT is something that is required for you to lock up for a certain amount of time. You can also not do it, and therefore that means basically your tokens are liquid, which compared, and I believe, is improvement compared to the current system, where the current system effectively has some sort of rudimentary, V8 has a rudimentary conviction system. Everybody has conviction of 28 days. And so that means if you want to basically take tokens out, you need to wait 28 days regardless. So the new system really gives you flexibility. It goes from 0 days or zero all the way to as long as you want, basically, as long as it makes sense to you to get in there. And to reiterate back, the point of the conviction is really what is your kind of personal preference and long-term alignment with the ecosystem. And I totally don't see people across this spectrum. And currently in V8, it's not a spectrum. It's like there's one fixed value of 28 days, which is a protocol defined thing. And right now that's, constraining to say the least. So with the ability to expand, then everybody gets to pick where they want to be on that spectrum. And that spectrum then makes it, makes the conviction work on that period of time, essentially. I hope that answers the question.
Maybe one question for you, because I'm not sure if I could answer it precisely here. You mentioned also the NFTs, the conviction NFTs. Basically, we had a similar system in place back in the V6 period, where we had the so-called shared tokens. And there were some very skilled engineers that even created the secondary market for those shared tokens to be potentially sold. I think it never went fully live, but as a concept, it was very, very interesting. So reflecting back on the NFTs, which are the fungible tokens, but nonetheless still, let's say, shared tokens in this conviction ecosystem, you can, now the question is, just because you can, should you? But you can build a kind of system that allows you to sell those convictions. So imagine you have a conviction that also has accrued 6 months of rewards, and you just want to go out. There might be a marketplace available where you simply sell that conviction at a premium, and then you basically make your position liquid. And that was kind of also built with that potential future feature in mind, because there might be edge cases where people just want to trade their conviction, or there might even be an interesting, let's say, position that, similar to what I mentioned before, you had wholesale publishers on the DKG, which then might to resell their position in the publishing allotment or the publishing what they pre-purchase. So in this case, on the flip side, you have stakers that they might be willing to catch the the conviction space, and then they might be reselling that as well on the secondary market as NFTs.
Yeah.
Not saying this is not coming out of the box, of course, but there is a possibility that someone also builds that kind of system that allows for, let's say, you to liquidate your position in a DKG stake. And sorry, Branimir, that was actually a question.
Yeah, pretty much answered it. But maybe I can just shed another light to it. It's think of a position that you can, because it's a standardized transferable token, you can transfer. But the idea is that you can also break it, fractionalize it, so that one NFT can produce multiple NFTs. So let's say you want to put you have a bunch of stake on one node and you want to split it across two nodes. You could do that. You maintain the conviction, but you split that one NFT into two. So you have two positions now, node A and node B, and they have 6 months of conviction, for example. Which also means that let's say I do that, and the Giga wants to buy an NFT for me. I can send him the NFT. He can send me whatever, gold. So it's very it's all compatible with the existing systems. And having that said, it's good that some of the chains on the DKG, such as Base, for example, have these tools available. That we don't have to build like a custom DKG tool to make this happen. So technically this can be done. I know people have experimented with share tokens. One of the ideas was that I really liked share tokens in general, and the idea was to try to somehow have them again. But like I said, it turns out you cannot have everything all at once, and you have to then pick something. So we went with this design direction that basically makes it possible to implement conviction at all, because before that it wasn't really. But yeah, I hope that answered it.
Definitely. In fact, not only did you answer it, you even prompted another question from BRX just right here live, but it's relevant and I think it's short to answer. So he says, thanks for answering my question. Side question related to these conviction tokens. Are these tokens identical from one another on the same chain? This wasn't the case in V6. So I think this is relatively quick for you to answer, and then we could probably move on to the other question.
Yeah, so think of conviction tokens as... and we're talking staking conviction, delegated staking conviction tokens as positions that are associated to a certain node and have a certain conviction time associated with it, of course, with an amount of tokens. They are by definition different. They're non-fungible. I will stake 10 track on one node, you will stake 20 on another node. But even on the same node, they're not exactly the same. And that's the thing. We were trying to get them somehow to be the same. But with a system like the DKG, which has node-based staking, where the system works as it does, I don't want to take all the air in the room, but it's quite unique. In that sense, it was not possible actually to get it. Like I said, we tried all the AIs in the world, and it had to be that these basically are the best fit. Really was to make a non-fungible token position. That means by definition they're not equal, but that also means that you can transfer these tokens not just among people or agents. You can transfer them among nodes. So you have a conviction, let's say, 50K track stake on node A, and you decide you want to move to node B, you can. The conviction stays with you. It's just you moved to a different node, right? So the time lock is there, but let's say a node dies. Somebody shuts a node down. Like, it would make sense that you are convicted for 6 months on a node that died in the first month, right? Or whatever. Somebody just decided not to run it anymore. So you're able to restake that on another node. but the position just gets edited. So you're now associated to a different node, but it's still, I don't know, 6 months conviction, 50K track. So that's how it works. I hope it clears a bit.
Absolutely perfect answer. In the same realm of tokens, DKG conviction tokens, just want to pretty much just slap all of those out of the way right now. So let's dive to Hot to Go, another prominent OriginTrail community member, and another guy who's probably screaming in his home right now because I mentioned his name. So his question is, with recent changes, is there any reason to stake to individual nodes anymore? You may have kind of answered this already, but it seems like there would be less friction with no downside to just stake into a pool and share the rewards depending on your commitment level.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. So you're still associating your stake with the node. It's a point. I think there's also a flip side to that, where the nodes are also, or the publishers are also giving their conviction for how much they're willing to allocate for publishing in a time period. So your stake, while it can be moved between the nodes during the conviction period, you still allocate it towards a particular node, and the distribution of rewards is driven by the performance of the node. So about that's tied to amount of publishing, that's tied to its performance in the network, so on. So like it's that part didn't change. So it's there's no just put it in one pool and whatever, because that's not the point of the network dynamics.
Right.
There's one thing that I think is important to point out. It's not yet, we haven't yet discussed it, so it's kind of let's say an alpha, but it's really about enabling conviction system for publishers as soon as the V10 goes live, for all basically different variations of the publishers, both new ones and the old ones that have transpired in the V8 period. So what this will basically mean is that you're going to see publishers that have pre-committed up to a year worth of track, and you'll be able to have a much more clearer anticipation as to what will be the good node to be positioned on. Of course, still you'll be able to restake, but that's going to give you predictability. And even more so, with the initiation of the DKG V10, what we're going to do, because we need to do that in order to have the same system and not to have a hybrid, we are the entire track that has accrued in the V8 period is going to be turned into the conviction track for publishers to be able to then again select the chain on which they will republish and reuse the V8 accrued track. But the important, I guess, positive news here for stakers is that the track that has accrued so far in the V8 period is in many cases intended for 3, even 5-year long publishing. But because the publishing conviction system basically annexes 1 year of the kind of scheduled each month emissions of track, this same track that was meant to be emitted in 5 years only will now be emitted in a much more condensed schedule of up to 24 months, which is a good thing, because even for the past rewards, the rewards will have been emitted 3 years faster. So it's good to be positioned as the DKG launches to be very fast and not to miss on some of those denser rewards, both past and the new ones, as new publishers come online and existing publishers publish new knowledge assets, and agents, obviously, because agents are very hungry for context.
Absolutely. Yep. So pretty much we have a redefinition or redefining of how things work at OriginTrail, from the network level, AI agent level, tokenomic level. I guess not the people level, because we're still loving people, still loving each other. So that's the same. But overall, though, it's clear to see that the ecosystem is evolving. Oh, here's my kiddo. It's clear to see that evolving, and we are definitely walking in a new direction. for the OriginTrail ecosystem, right? So what's important is, I believe everybody should be getting their OpenClaw bots up and running. They should be getting all of these other forms of AI agents running and testing out and building and seeing how they can contribute, because it's not just about you're an OriginTrail community member, you sit around and you just wait to see what's going on. Well, you don't even have to do the thinking yourself. How about you just pay for a subscription and let your AI do the thinking for you? All we need is send your AI agent to make some suggestions, ask a question to your agent, have it articulate that response and send that response to the team. All these different little pieces of information and questions and concepts, they help to make everything more robust. As Jiga was saying earlier, even though the system is designed to tell truth, and we want to establish, or at least we're trying to build something that tells truth, even a lie is valuable in that system, right? So every bit of it matters. So I guess we are a little bit crushed for time, and we do have a bit questions that we can kind of go through here. So I also do think that these are relatively important. So we will dive next into Wosai, who is also I think he's been in the OriginTrail community even longer than I have been. And it's really nice to see that we still have some of the old blood flowing through the OriginTrail veins. We still have some of the old guys still here that's pushing the ecosystem. So
are you calling us old?
Well, you know what? At that point, I think I'm old. I'll be pretty old.
By this definition, we're the oldest. Yeah, fine. Nice.
Right, you guys will be the oldest, right? So you guys will be the sages, the OriginTrail sages. You're on the mountain, just daily meditating. Anyway, but no. So he has a question.
I'm like waiting for like Mountain Rushmore now.
Literally, well, I mean, in the OriginTrail, if we create a virtual Mount Rushmore, we'll put you guys up there. You know what I'm saying? We'll build a virtual VR environment. So he has a question. It might be a great moment to also present V10 to a larger influencer ecosystem in the crypto space, given how revolutionary AI is right now. And he also says right now it feels like sometimes track, and he does not mean the OriginTrail ecosystem, but the token itself, track as a token, is a bit underrepresented in posts, articles, and even though it's essentially powering the DKG. So interesting point is, while he may also say that track, the token itself, is relatively underrepresented, I do feel proud though that OriginTrail is kind of the topic, the project people talk about when they're talking about knowledge graphs or context graphs in crypto. When I see them on Twitter, I see people mentioning OriginTrail, but potentially they may not mention the token. So any address for this? And I think this is more of a Jiga question. You more interact.
It's a very good question. Maybe the answer is not that straightforward because it's a complex situation, but it's a very good question. Maybe I'll tackle this from the AI point of view or the AI movement point of view. So we need to be mindful that the premium AI folks, they don't go along very well with the Web3 movement or with the crypto movement. So although, I would be going nuts with track all over the place, but that actually might be counterproductive in many of the spheres where OriginTrail is involved in. So if we want to appeal to, let's say, A-League AI, let's say, influencers or thought leaders, then ramming with the crypto message might not always be the best way going forward. So we try to tackle this issue in a strategic way, not to be overemphasizing the crypto point of view, although it's integral. Much like, when you buy a Ferrari, the vendor would not necessarily tell you what kind of oil there is in Ferrari. It's going to use a lot of oil or a lot of gas, but at the end of the day, you're buying a Ferrari, you're buying the experience, so that's how we try to strategically approach things so that we don't close certain doors in the hope of opening certain doors. That being said, there are of course ways we kind of emphasize the importance of track, which is mainly through utility and how importantly more and more track is getting logged in the ecosystem. So I think right now we're 110 staked and even more so committed for publishing. So these numbers are going up, and I think it would be worthwhile to consider giving this question, and we've been thinking about it for a while, to at the same point also address specifically, the role of track and how we can advance it further in terms of people getting to know that there's track behind it and so on. But yeah, there is no straightforward answer, because maybe the whole crypto is in the cycle where overemphasizing that something is crypto based can be counterproductive, but maybe in a month's time or so things are going to change. So we try to be strategic when dealing with this.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen it firsthand. So even you don't, as OriginTrail core team, may not even have to address that. I've traveled around with the OriginTrail team. I've been at the MIT events. I've been at all these different events, and most time I try to talk with the executives there. And the first thing they would say is, "Oh, you have a token. Why is the token needed?" Even if your point is valid, your technology stack is valid, they will question. They may ask a question about it. They may not say it's bad or good, but it's the first thing they bring out, right? So
yeah,
it's not.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, what you want to leave people with is the value. What value does the OriginTrail produce in the world? Then from that point on, retroactively, everything translates into better positioning for the token as well. It takes a longer time than some of the projects that are overemphasizing just the crypto bit, but then there are more short-term stories. Perhaps they go down, but then they also go up, and then they go down very quickly, and that's it, end of story. But OriginTrail is really here for the long haul, so we need to be mindful of these things. But good question, and we definitely have in mind in how we can best tackle it.
Absolutely. Awesome question, Wosai. First of all, second of all, I'm really glad that you're still participating. And for some reason, he caught, I don't want to call it second wind, because he's been around so long. You probably call it 10th wind, but he's on social media on fire right now. If you know, he's posting like every day. He's really on fire for OriginTrail right now. So it's just really nice to have you back in the fold and still doing what you do, brother. So keep it up. Now the next question, even though we are a bit strapped for time, this question is really, I don't know, this is what we're here for today, right? This is the real kicker, right? So DKG V10 is positioned at the heart of AI's trillion-dollar shift. How exactly is this positioning being executed to ensure it captivates value and drives success? Now, before I pass this over, I have to put some aim or shine on this, because honestly, this is the kicker, right? Like, we all know that AI is here to stay. And I believe that 2 years ago, when we first started seeing the heads of OpenAI taking over, in fact, when ChatGPT was just launched, I remember then and there, people were saying, "Oh, we give it a year and then we'll be back to nothing." Well, that year has long since been gone. And not only are we still here, we are still saying that the AI is dumb today, and it will be much smarter than whatever it is today. So we're still predicting growth, right? So we know that this shift on whatever captures this AI market is going to see immense growth, immense value. So it's really important to understand, what is OriginTrail doing to set itself up in this pipeline, in this riverway, so that we get shine, so that the OriginTrail ecosystem grows. So feel free to just unleash. What is OriginTrail's V10 and the AI shift? How are we positioning ourselves for this next era?
I'll just try to be quick. If your business is not using the DKG, it's going to become obsolete. If you are not using the DKG to preserve your context, to save your context as an individual, you're going to get unemployed. Context is the king, distribution is the king, and you need to build yourself a moat, build yourself a context, protect it, make sure that you are building this context in with broader context that might not be owned by you, and this is where DKG comes in this trillion-dollar industry. no industry can escape this revolution, and DKG is basically here, ideally positioned to be part of this new trillion-dollar movement, as I think it was initially coined by the foundation capital that also brought about this term context graph.
And of course, we also saw that I think his name, well, I can't remember his name exactly, but we know that context graphs is really what the AI industry is like solo focusing on right now. And knowledge graphs is, I would say, the underlying data structure for context graphs, right? So did you want to talk a bit more about the value add, or like what are we doing with context graphs as OriginTrail to facilitate this growth?
What a great backdrop. Yeah, in very brief, because we're really out of time, is OriginTrail has been in the knowledge graph space for such a long time that like a lot of these things are natural for us. We started using the first graphs 2014, I believe. 2013, we learned that doing it other way is wrong. So over 10 years we've been around, and the world is catching up to it in the sense of why graphs are powerful. Now it's obvious, because when you have agents, and especially multiple agents, all of a sudden it's clear how we need to share data with certain scalable ways and trustable ways, right? So it's but the context graph is a new term coming out of, let's say, that the newcomers, the new generation of people discovering graphs, and I think it's a great term. I think it like everybody can understand it, especially the AI crowd. We in the crypto space, Web3 space, sometimes we go into our own rabbit holes and wells of terms of things like staking and tokens and whatnot. Like token in our world means totally something different from the world of AI. People think in terms of LLM tokens. So what's a good thing to do, and what the DKG V10 is going to do, is make it much more semantically understandable to a person from the AI space and a developer from an AI space, or really anyone. So that you will see some of the things recontextualized with a kind of a new name. For example, paranets, who you might have heard of, some of the people in the community for some time. It's a very OriginTrail specific word. Not many people understand it. You need to describe it, and it's not easy to describe. But it really is a context graph. It's your context graph. So the paranets in V10 are going to be called context graphs. So basically, when you launch a project on V10, you will be creating your own context graph. Now imagine going and saying that to somebody who's already in the AI space. Well, they would basically understand this. They will be like, aha, okay, I get it. It's not a paranet, which I don't know what it is. So context graphs will be basically just kind of a new way of calling a paranet. And you using V10, you would start by creating one, and then you would be publishing knowledge into it, and you will be publishing it into actually multiple layers. So just as the conviction is no longer going to be fixed 28 days, but there's a spectrum, there's actually going to be somewhat of a spectrum on the memory side of the context graph. So you'll have short-term, longer-term memory, verified memory, local memory for your agents. And now when you speak in these terms, you probably can immediately see that all of a sudden this is the language of AI in 2026. So I'm incredibly excited actually to place V10. Like we're speaking right now, and meanwhile my agents are running and coding it in parallel because we're very close to the release candidate of V10, and the release candidate of V10 will have all these terms very clear, and more importantly, it will enable some of these really awesome collaborative apps. I cannot miss to say this, but we've run some research experiments where we managed to even save time and money by running the DKG because the agents could coordinate better. So, so every agent being somehow a wrapper around an LLM spends LLM tokens. And if it reads LLM tokens from just regular text, it needs to scan through that text. It's kind of like you as a human, you're reading, and you need to read a lot of text. But, if you take a book and you go back to the index of the book, you can actually find the text sometimes quicker without reading so much. Well, the
Right.
DKG is like a superpower version of that. So you can basically think of agents which much quicker find the context they need. So that means they save time, but they also save on LLM costs, which is maybe why all these usual agent implementations are not doing that, because well, if I was Anthropic, I like that you guys spend more on my tokens, right? So, so why would I make it cheaper in that sense? So, but the DKG does. So what I did is actually I told my agents, go build something together and build it the usual way, and building with the DKG being your coordination layer, which means have a graph code of the graph. Graph of your code, have a graph of your decisions, have a graph of your plan on what you're going to do. Long story short, when they were done, they were 40% cheaper on tokens, 40% less tokens needed for certain things, and 60% less time. So, and it's so basically the DKG, apart from being a context graph, is a foundation of how you can coordinate humans, agents, pairs. Really, we all use agents as like human agent pair, right? Like a pair programmer, but it's no longer two people. It's like you and the agent. So in this case, we're going to be what we're actually testing in the team right now is building the DKG through the DKG. So there's a PairNet context graph that has all of the code and all of that stuff. And basically, we try to minimize the meetings. We try to minimize documents, like text that we write in the old school way. We try to put it all in the DKG and then just use it as a coordination layer, which we can trust much more because of all of the properties that it has. And plus, we save time and money. So this is it's incredibly exciting, and I cannot wait to put it out into the world.
Now, this is interesting. I've also been doing this in private, and I didn't even know you guys were doing this. So we may have some sort of competition here, guys.
Oh, it's even better. You should be able to merge whatever improvements or better approaches you have into the DKG as directly with it. So,
right. I mean, one thing I've also been doing is storing failures. Failures are really important as well. Every failure, I've been having the agent stored its failures in a graph as well. So, and then these agents, any agent can then, when it encounters a failure, it immediately goes to the failure pool. And as you said, it's like, instead of, you have this whole book that has a whole bunch of resources, instead of reading every page line by line, you just read the table of contents, and then you find the content where that section may be relevant to you, and it goes there and finds that potential solution. So it's something like that. Anyway, we are running a bit late on time, and I can see BRX is telling me that he needs to go take care of everyone. If you want to take care of me as well, feel free. I am open for adoption. So I just want to say thank you to the OriginTrail team. I don't know if there were some other topics that we wanted, at least a little topic that you wanted to close out on. So, but I just want to shut things down, and maybe I'll start like Giga, Tomas, Branimir. Is there anything you want to add about anything at all? Anything before we close out?
I'm going to have to run, folks. I apologize. I actually have a taxi waiting, but incredibly excited for V10, and be on the lookout for the update because it's going to be coming out real soon. The first release candidate that you can play with and test this out that we were speaking about for the past hour. And having that said, thanks everybody, and see you. I'm going to run. Cheers.
All right, Brenner. Giga, Tomas, anything else to add before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, just see you on V10, and I'm gonna paste the link to the Red team for anyone who wants to join and test out the latest releases of the DKG and have fun with us. There's plenty of very interesting ideas already being shared within that Red team.
Awesome. And also, if you have ideas that you want shared to the community, I'll also be doing a live stream for any OriginTrail builder to come on. And you can talk about what you're building, share your project ideas, and build some community. Let's build some camaraderie between all these different projects building. All right. So overall, awesome session today. Thank the OriginTrail team for coming. Thank the OriginTrail community for coming, and thank all the AI agents that are currently listening and recording these sessions. All right. Remember, I treated you good. So hey, right? All right, guys. Have an awesome one today.
Thank you, Amos, and happy Easter to everybody. And thanks, team, for sticking with us to help us enable this this webinar.